ಸಂಸಾರದ ನರಳಿದಲೋಕ ಪ್ರಣಯ ಕಾರುಣ್ಯ ಗಣಗನಾಥ ಸಂಸಾರದವ ನರಳಿದಲೋಕ ಪ್ರಣಯ ಕಾರುಣ್ಯ ಗಣಗನ ಪ್ರಾಪ್ತ ಸಕಾಲ್ಯನ ಗುರುನಾನವಸ Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vaditramandyan Manasura Sena Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shingaratanama Diramajanado Yuktasya bhaktamsya niyunjatapi Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavad Prasadu Satana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangha Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavad Prasadu Satana Triptan Kridaiva Tripti Bhajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Shiradikama Davayara Para Madhura Leela Gunarupa Namna Pratikshana Swa Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Ne kunjayuno ratikari siddhai Jajali virjukte apekshaniya Nikunjayono ratikari siddhai Jajali virjukte Tatra atidaksha ativalabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Sakyadharidvena Shamasta Shashre Ruktastathava Gataiva Sadhuvi Kintu pravarja priya eva tasya Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrinda Yasya prasada Bhagavat prasada Yasya prasada Nagati kutapi Yasya prasada Nagati kutapi Dhyayam stubam tasya Yasatrin sandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanaravinda Yasatrin sandhyam Dhyayam stubam tasya Yasatrin sandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanaravinda Nama O Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitina Mine Nama O Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitina Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachatari Shatarine Namaste Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachatari Shatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shivasari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hariyaraye Namah, Krishna Jadavaye Namah, Jadavaye Madhavaya Kesavaye Namah, Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan, Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavad Gita. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattara Guna. Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasara Guna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Shri Shri Radha, Nila Madhava Radha, Nila Madhava Radhe, Radha, Nila Madhava. Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Jaya Sitaram, 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 Jaya Lakshman Hanuman. Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Go, Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Brahmananya, Hari Haribo. Jai Vishnu Padmanamita Prabha Jagacharya Sutara Sarasi Shimat Yajman Grace Abhochan Vino Bhakti Viranta Swami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Pratishta Bhiviti Samstapakacharya Vaishnava Saramani Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patita Udhari Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhattara Gunata Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Satgoswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिव सरि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। जय परम दयाल से नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय। जय प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जनक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिदानंदन श्रीमन गौरांग श्री चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि मावरण अवतार की जय। गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरि नाम संकीर्तन जय की जय। जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। बृहद नितांग ट्रांसलेंटर बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय। शिष्य राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपना राधा कुंज श्याम कुंज गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय। श्री ब्रज वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जय। तेलो शिव शिष्य राधंजल माधव की जय। श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय। परम करुण शिष्य गौर निताय की जय। श्री पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु भद्रदेव सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय। भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशन कर सिंहरे भगवान की जय। गंगा माय जमुना माय की जय। तुलसी महारानी वृंदी देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। श्रीमती राधा रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। नेताय गौरी प्रमानंदे हरिबो। All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru Shri Gauranga. Like that, I don't understand why you want it. When you go like that.
Okay, you can't figure
the
out.
India.
Okay. I will use
That's
words.
Indian style.
Yes.
What did you just? Okay.
Correct.
नमस्ते नरसिंहाय नमस्ते नरसिंहाय प्रह्लाद लाददायिने हिरण्यकाशीपूर्वक्षः शिलाटङ्कानखालाय इतो नरसिंहा परतो नरसिंहो यतो यतो यामि ततो नरसिंहो बाहिर्नरसिंहो हृदये नरसिंहो नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपदे तव करकमलावरे नखाम् अद्भुतशृङ्गाम् दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृङ्गा केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जयो नरसिंहदेव 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 जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो भक्त प्रह्लाद भक्त प्रह्लाद भक्त प्रह्लाद जयो भक्त प्रह्लाद जयो जयो प्रभुपाद 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 जयो श्रीला प्रभुपाद श्रीला गुरुदेव की जय।
using tulsi as well?
I don't know if I'll be able to sing that very well.
Okay.
You sing. I will do.
Shri Vrindai Tulasi Vai Priyaya Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Satavataye Namo Namaha. Vrindai Tulasi Vai Priyaya Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Satavataye Namo Namaha. Vrindaya Tulasi Devai Priyaya Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Satavataye Namo Namaha. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi. Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi. Namo Namaha Radha Krishna Seva Pava Abhinasi. Radha Krishna Radha Krishna Seva Pava Eya Vilasi. Jetomara Sharanala Tahara Vancha Purna. Jetomara Kripa kare karatare Vrindavanavasi. Tumi kripa kare karatare Vrindavanavasi. Tumi kripa kari karatare Vrindavana. Namo Namo Moraya Vila Vilasa Kunje Diyova Moraya Nayane Ribo Sada Chogala Ruparasi Ame. এই নিবেদন ধর সখীর অনুগত কর, সেবায়াদি কর দিয়ে কর নিজ দাসী। দীনা কৃষ্ণ দাস কয় এই নামরাও, শ্রী রাধা গোবিন্দ প্রেমে সদয় নপাসি। শ্রী রাধা গোবিন্দ প্রেমে সদয় নবাসি। তুলসী কৃষ্ণ প্রেয়সী নমো নমঃ, তুলসী কৃষ্ণ প্রেয়সী। जने कनिष पपने ब्रह्महत्यारि कनिष, तने तने प्रन्नसन्ति प्रदक्षिणा परे परे। जने कनिष पपने ब्रह्महत्यारि कनिष, तने तने प्रन्नसन्ति प्रदक्षिणा परे परे। यानि कनिष पपने ब्रह्महत्यारि कनिष, तने तने प्रन्नसन्ति प्रदक्षिणा परे परे। Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Vrinda Devi. Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo. मजी तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की जय। श्री वृंदाई तुलसी देवाय प्रिय केशव सत्य, विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्वताय नमो नमः। वृंदाई तुलसी देवाय प्रिय केशव सत्य, विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्वताय नमो नमः। वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रिय केशव सत्य, Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satabataye Namo Namaha. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shishi Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of his wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire that you also give me a residence in pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan. Thus within my vision I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of the of Raj. Please give me the privilege of personal service and make me honored servant. This very fallen and lowly servant Krishna praise. May I always see me love Shri Radha and Govind. Shrimati Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Kristakam Ki Chaito Darpana Marjanam Bhava Mahadava Nirvapanam Shayakari Vachandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Vadivadhanam Karipadam Pugnamita Shradanam Sarvatmasnam Paravaram Jai Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Yogdha Isa Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pitani Amita Shmani Nakala Ita Dusitava Kupaya Bhagavan Mamapi Durdhaivam Idishamya Jani Anuraga Vinarapi Sanichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amani Namanadina Kirtaniya Sadahari Adhanam na janam na sundarim Kavitam Vajagari Shakamaye Mama Janmani Janmanishwari Bhavatar Bhakti Rahituki Tvai Oinandatam Jakinkaram Paritam Mam Visame Bhavambudav Kripaya Tava Par Pankaja Sita Dhuli Sadrisham Vichintaya Nanam Galorashrudharaya Vadanam Gadagadarudaya Gira Pulakairin Chitamba Pukada Tavanama Grahane Bhavishyati Juga Itam Nimishena Chakusha Prabhusha Itam Shunya Itam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Verahe me Aslishva Padaratam Pinastumam Adarshnar Marmahatam Karotuva Jata Tathava Vidadatu Lampato Mat Pranatastu Saivana Paraha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Siksastakam Ki Jai Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Guru Tvishe Namaha. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart with the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire condition of life of repeated birth and death. The Sankirtana moment is the prompt benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental image. There are no different hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause of devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet some or other I am fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, or will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? Or will my voice choke up? Or will the hairs of my body stand on end the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I'm considering a moment to be like 12 years and more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and it should remain so, even if it handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he's always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna Kam Ki Jai. Krishna Krishna Chaitanya There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the Vedic. 2. To consider names of the demigods, our Lord Shiva and Lord Brahman, to be equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literatures, all literatures and pursuits of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation of the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities in the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas, spiritual activity, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy names, and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Evancha kalpatarubhascha vipa sindhu vyaivacha paritanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Jananta Kutve Shamindi Ki Jai. Shri Guru Govinda Mangalachan Ki Om Jnana Timirandasya Karanjana Sanadai Jatsurnetam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Shaktam Jaina Guru
Govinda Sarva Karna Karna Chintamani Prakasa Govinda Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Kanantam Aravinda Dalayaksham Parhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpa Kotika Maniya Vishesha Sobam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Anurvaldanda Sadvanamaya Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranay Kili Kalavilasam Shamam Chibanga Lalita Niyata Prakasam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purisham Navayovanam Cha Vede Sudurlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayora Tapi Manaso Munipungamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tatve Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekop Yasora Chaitam Jagadanda Kotim Yaschakti Rasti Jagadanda Chayayadanta Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajastata Samprapya Rupa Mahimasana Yanabusaha Suktarya Meva Nigama Pratitastavanti Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Patibhavita Bistabirya Eva Nijarupa Taya Kalabi Goloka Eva Nivisata Kilatma Bhuto Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santak Sadeva Hidayesa Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Kalani Menatisthan Avatar Makarobu Nesukintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramambamam Yo Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Pavuto Jagadanda Koti Tisvase Suvasadadi Vibhukti Benam Tad Brahma Niskalamanantam Asesa Bhutam Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Mayahi Yasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Jayagunya Tad Visaya Veda Vitayamanam Sadvavalambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasuya Praninam Patifalam Smaratam Upetya Lila Yatena Bhuvanani Jayaya Jasram Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijadamni Talechatasya Devi Mahesu Haridama Sutesu Tete Prabhavani Jaya Vitastayena Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shristi Stati Pralaya Sadava Sakti Reka Jayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vivarti Durga Ichana Rupam Apyasya Chachestatesa Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Vishesha Yoga Sanjayate Nahitata Pritagrasyetu Yasambhutam Apitata Samapaitikar Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dipachade Hita Santaram Abhyapetya Dipayate Vivitahetu Samanu Dharma Yastadrikeva Hicha Vishnu Daya Vibhate Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yakarna Narnava Jale Bhajatisma Yoga Nidramananta Jagadanda Saroma Kupaha Adhara Saktim Avalambya Puram Smamurtim Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaika Nisvasita Kalamata Valambya Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagadandanata Vishnu Mahansa Yasya Kalaviseso Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Basman Yatasma Sakaleshan Jaisa Teja Swiyam Kiyat Prakatayata Pitadvatatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidana Karta Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palava Yugam Vidaya Kumbad Vande Pranama Samayes Ganadi Raja Vignan Vihanta Malamasya Jagatrayasya Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahiga Ganamambu Marudisas Chakalas Tatatma Manasiti Jagatrayana Yasmat Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Yamcha Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschak Suresa Savita Sakala Grahanam Raja Samasta Suramurti Resesa Teja Yasya Gaya Brahmati Sambrita Kalachakro Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmota Papa Nijaya Sutapamsi Brahmadi Kita Patagava Deyasta Jiva Yadata Mata Vibhava Prakata Prabhava Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yastrinda Gopa Matavendra Mahoswa Karma Bandana Rupa Falabhajana Mata tanoti karmani nirdhati kintu cha bhakti bhajam govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami yam krodha kama sahaja pranayadi biti vatsalya moha guru garavara seva bhavai sanchintya tasya sarvisim tanamaparete govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami sriya kanta kanta parama purusha kalpataravo jumabu mischintamani ganama yitoyam amritam kata ganam natyam gamanam apivam sipriyasa kichiranandam choti param apitad asvadyam apicha sayatra shiradabhi savadishurabhyascha sumaha nimesa dakyuva rajati nahi yatrapi samaya braje svitadvipyam tamaham iya kulakamitiam vidantas te santakshiti virachara katipa iswara parama krishna sachitananda vigraha nadir adir govinda sarvakarana karana guru vastika prayers ki jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material system. However, my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet is such a spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious qualities, chanting the holy name, dancing, ecstasy, singing, and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the sanctified movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end, and he feels quivering in his body, and tears fall from his eyes like waves. However, my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet is such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. However, my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet is such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasadi, he is satisfied. Offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet is such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastime of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. Offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet is such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting gopis who at different times meet different tastes and arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana. Offer my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet is such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all real scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet is such a spiritual master as a bona fide representative of Shri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2. We're going to do again verse number 11. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Padarsyatapta tapapsam avitripta drisam nrinam adayantar adad yastu swabimbam lokalochanam pradarshriya, by exhibiting, atapta, without undergoing, tapasam, penances, avitripta, drisam, without fulfillment of vision, nrinam, of persons, adaya, taking, anta, disappearance, adat, performed, ya, he who, to, but, swabimbam, his own form, lokalochanam, public vision. Translation by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Lord Shri Krishna, who manifested his eternal form before the vision of all on the earth, performed his disappearance by removing his form from the sight of those who were unable to see him as he is, due to not executing required penance. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In this verse, the word avitripta drisam is most significant. The conditioned souls in the material world are all trying to satisfy their senses in various ways, but they have failed to do so because it is impossible to be satisfied by such efforts. The example of the fish on land is very appropriate. If one takes a fish from the water and puts it on the land, it cannot be made happy by any amount of offered pleasure. The spirit soul can be happy only in the association of the supreme living being, the personality of Godhead, and nowhere else. The Lord, by his unlimited causeless mercy, has innumerable Vaikuntha planets in the Brahmajyoti sphere of the spiritual world, and in that transcendental world there is an unlimited arrangement for the unlimited pleasure of the living entities. The Lord himself comes to display his transcendental pastimes, typically represented at Vrindavana, Mathura, and Dwarka. He appears just to attract the conditioned souls back to Godhead, back home to the eternal world. But for want of sufficient piety, the onlookers are not attracted by such pastimes of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that only those who have completely surpassed the way of sinful reaction can engage themselves in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The entire Vedic way of ritualistic performances is to put every conditioned soul on the path of piety. By strict adherence to the prescribed principles of all orders of social life, one can attain the qualities of truthfulness, control of the mind, control of the senses, forbearance, etc., and can be elevated to the plane of rendering pure devotional service to the Lord. Only by such a transcendental vision are one's material hankerings fully satisfied. When the Lord was present, persons who were able to satisfy their material hankerings by seeing him in true perspective were thus able to go back with him to his kingdom. But those persons who were unable to see the Lord as he is remained attached to material hankerings and were not able to go back home, back to Godhead. When the Lord passed beyond the vision of all, he did so in his original eternal form, as stated in this verse. The Lord left in his own body. He did not leave his body, as is generally misunderstood by the conditioned souls. This statement defeats the false propaganda of the faithless non-devotees that the Lord passed away like an ordinary conditioned soul. The Lord appeared in order to release the world from the undue burden of the non-believing asuras, and after doing this, he disappeared from the world's eyes. Yes, so I'm going over this a second time because it is extremely profound. Most people don't really understand what's being said by this purport, and it requires a little bit more explanation. And yesterday we got stuck looking up two things that are somewhat relevant to this purport, and we're going to go over those now more carefully. The points that need to be more carefully looked at are, number one, the conditioned souls in the material world are trying to satisfy their senses in various ways, but they have failed to do so because it is impossible to be satisfied by such efforts. This is a major statement because everybody is trying to please their senses in various ways, right? And we discussed some of the perversions that happen or are developed by people due to this excessive trying to please their own senses rather than trying to please Krishna's senses. So one of them was mentioned yesterday, but we were not able to find it. So now we can find it. There was one Armenian guy named Minasyan, who's born in Canada, and he killed 11 people. He ran them over with his truck, and he injured a whole bunch of another 15 people. And he was tried, and this was in 2018. And he was tried and found guilty, and they still haven't finished sentencing him, but they're going to definitely sentence him. I don't think they have the death penalty in Canada, so they'll maintain him alive until he dies naturally, most probably. I'm not sure. So, but what is interesting about this person is He was only 28 years old, and he got involved with Incept. Now, Incept is there are different web pages about this Incept, and they sort of worship a guy who did the same thing that Menashe did, but in 2000, I think it was 4, he killed some people, and then he killed himself. Menashe, of course, did not kill himself. Now, why did he kill people? Because he's part of this group of people that have these web pages in which they cannot satisfy their sense gratification. And they hold a grudge against men who do satisfy, who are getting all the sense gratification they want, and to women who are giving such men sense gratification, but not to other people like Menashe and his cronies. So they begrudge these two types of people, the men that are getting sense gratification and women that are giving it to them, but not to people like Menashe. And they think it's justified to kill people because of that. So you looked that up yesterday, right? Incept?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So here we see exactly what Prabhupada is saying. The conditioned souls in the material world are all trying to satisfy their senses in various ways, but they have failed to do so because it is impossible to be satisfied by such efforts. So, trying to do something that's impossible means you go crazy. Just like if you put a monkey in front of a computer and try and force it to learn how to run the computer, you would get the monkey very frustrated, and eventually he'll try and break the computer. Don't try it, or it might attack you also. When you force people to do something that they can't really achieve, they go crazy, or they become internally a psychological mess. So this is what's going on today. People are trying to please their senses and independent of God, and because of that, they're getting distressed and very frustrated and forlorn. Prabhupada uses that word in this letter to Mr. Tabor in 1967. In that letter, I'm going to read it again because it's very significant. He says, "So far as your distress is concerned, it is not new. It is the general condition of the living entities who are distressed for want of sense gratification." There it is, right there. People are distressed because they want sense gratification. And it's impossible for them to get the sense gratification they want, because you cannot really have real sense gratification without connection to Krishna. Now, is this hard to understand? Yes. People don't want to understand it. That's why it's hard. It's not hard to understand. It's very simple. Just like if you say, look, you can't learn you can't be a doctor without going to school and being educated and then having a long internship under the direct management of experienced doctors. You can try. You can fake it if you want. Some people do fake it. They put up a sign, doctor, and for some years they get away with it, and then the people figure out he never really got his degree, and then they're prosecuted. So in the same way, Prabhupada is saying that it's not possible to get real sense gratification independent of Krishna. The conditioned souls in the material world are all trying to satisfy their senses in various ways, but they have failed to do so because it is impossible to be satisfied by such efforts. The example of the fish on land is very appropriate. If one takes a fish from the water and puts it on the land, It cannot be made happy by any amount of offered pleasure. The spirit soul can be happy only in the association of the Supreme Living Being, the Personality Godhead, and nowhere else. Now, do we believe this? Most people will say, I don't believe that. I'm happy having sex, I have money, I have cars, I have nice houses, everything's going all right. Oh my God, the stock market went down, and it's having a terrible bear market. There's the bull market and the bear market. Bull market means it's going up, and the bear market means it's going down. Right? So right now, the stock market is going down. Am I right? Seriously. And it's affecting a lot of people. And they're getting a little bit very jittery, and pretty soon it's going to be panic. Right? So we see that this I am happy, I don't really need God. I am happy because I have a great job, I have a great family, I have cars, I take vacations, this thing, that thing, my kids are in the best school, blah, blah, blah. That can all change overnight. That whole thing can change overnight, like it changed in Ukraine overnight. Ukraine's a very wealthy country and very prosperous. And look what's happening to it. It's being destroyed little by little, right? And it's going to go on for a long time. This war is not going to end soon. So you can see. And then look at Trump. He had a great economy. He was sure to be elected again. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere comes this disease, and it ruins the economy and ruins the basis on which he was going to be reelected. In spite of everything the Democrats were doing to try and destroy him, they finally got him with COVID. You see, because his whole thing was based on economic development. And Prabhupada clearly says you cannot achieve perfection of life by economic development. You know, it's too vulnerable to many different conditions, the weather condition, war condition, you know, and so forth. So here Prabhupada is saying, so far as your distress is concerned, it is not new. It is the general condition of living entities who are distressed for want of sense gratification. Well, this was Menashe's thing. He was distressed because he was not getting the sex that he wanted. And he got angry at the women that were giving sex to other men and not to him. And he got angry at the men that were getting that sex. So he wanted to kill people. That was his conclusion. And when he killed people, he posted a statement glorifying another guy in 2004 who did the same thing. And he's saying, he is my hero. I'm following him. You know, he is my God. This is crazy stuff, but it's all due to trying to do something that's impossible. It is impossible to actually attain real happiness by sense gratification. But if you use your senses to please Krishna's senses, you will attain perfection. And here it says that. Unless one is related with Sri Krishna, the reservoir of all pleasures, it is very difficult to have complete pleasures, perception in this material world. In other words, you cannot get complete happiness without connection to Krishna. You have read Bhagavad Gita, and it is stated that ultimate happiness can be realized by transcendental senses only. Okay, now where is that said? And there are two very important verses that establish that. One is 6th chapter, 21st to 24th verse. So it says there, in the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. Now, it's a small s here. It's not a big S, right? What does that mean exactly? Well, when you see yourself as an eternal soul who has an eternal relationship with Krishna, then what happens? You're beginning to see yourself by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. Now, if you see yourself with the mindset of Menashen, you're going to be a failure in life. You see. He's not seeing himself properly. He was not educated properly. And he did not have the right association. He did not have the right master. He's considering this guy who committed suicide in 2004 as his master, as his God. See? That's why unless a child is trained to understand the unique qualities of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and to naturally worship Krishna as the Supreme God, either in the form of Jagannath, or Radha Krishna form, or Narayana form, or Lord Rama form. But you have to worship, that the kids should be definitely engaged in worshiping the Lord and hearing about the Lord regularly every day, to be convinced that they are the eternal servant of the Lord. Then they see themselves correctly. So it says here, this perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. And then the next verse, and there's a long purport, and then the next verse says, one should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with determination and faith, and not be deviated from the path. One should abandon, without exception, all material desires born of mental speculation, and thus control all the senses on all sides by the mind. And then in the purport, it says, success is sure for the rigid practitioner. So our yoga is called Bhakti Yoga. We don't have to do the Hatha Yoga or Astanga Yoga. We just engage in Bhakti Yoga. That is our pleasurable tapasya. The other yogas are unpleasurable tapasyas. But this Bhakti Yoga is full of pleasure and ecstasy. And then, so, how does one become a rigid practitioner? Utsaha nishchayataya tatat karma pavartanat. Sangatyagat sato vrite sadbir bhaktir prasiddhati. One can execute the process of Bhakti Yoga successfully with full-hearted enthusiasm. How do you get that enthusiasm? You have to associate with people who are enthusiastic. Just like one day, one devotee came up to me and said, Prabhu, I'm having a tough time with my wife. She's always criticizing everything I do. Every little thing I do, she criticizes it. I don't know what to do. I said, well, you have to learn to tolerate that. But how can I tolerate it? Sometimes she criticizes my mom and dad. Sometimes every little thing I do, she criticizes. I said, but that's normal, Prabhu. What? I said, all women do that. In the beginning, it's like, pink roses and everything is wonderful. You're on your honeymoon, and she completely agrees with you. She adores you, But quickly, after about 2-3 months, it changes, and the rest of your life, it's hell. He said, Prabhu, how do you know all these things? Oh, I said, it's called experience. And you just have to tolerate it. He said, no, I can't tolerate it. No, you have to. I said, you have to tolerate it. Because actually it's good for you, good for me, good for all men. What do you mean it's good? I said, because your wife is training you. He said, training me what? What do you mean she's training me? She's training you to teach you that there's no happiness in the material world. If you learn that lesson, I said, you'll become a pure devotee. He said, I don't know if I can understand it. No, I said, no, you have to understand this. She's your best friend. She's teaching you there's no happiness in the material world unless you become Krishna conscious. Then you will attain the highest happiness. But you will tolerate all the negativity. He said, this is too much for me. He said, I don't understand all this. I said, no. I mean, no, but basically that's what it's saying here. One can execute the process of bhakti yoga successfully with full-hearted enthusiasm, perseverance, and determination by following the prescribed duties in the association of devotees and by engaging completely in activities of goodness. So this is the formula for success if we want to be successful. As for determination, one should follow the example of the sparrow who lost her eggs in the waves of the ocean. A sparrow laid her eggs on the shore of the ocean, but the big ocean carried away the eggs on its waves. The sparrow became very upset and asked the ocean to return her eggs. The ocean did not even consider her appeal, so the sparrow decided to dry up the ocean. She began to pick out the water in her small beak, and everyone laughed at her for her impossible determination. The news of her activity spread, and at last Garuda, the gigantic bird carrier of Lord Vishnu, heard it. He became compassionate toward this small sister bird, and so he came to see the sparrow. Garuda was very pleased by the determination of the small sparrow, and he promised to help. Thus Garuda at once asked the ocean to return her eggs, lest he himself take up the work of the sparrow. The ocean was frightened at this and returned the eggs. Thus the sparrow became happy by the grace of Garuda. Similarly, the practice of yoga, especially bhakti yoga and Krishna consciousness, may appear to be a very difficult job. But if anyone follows the principles with great determination, the Lord will surely help, for God helps those who help themselves. This is a fantastic purport, right? Then, secondly, the same point is made, again, in the 18th chapter, verses 52 to 54, 51 to 54. And it says, being purified by his intelligence and controlling the mind with determination, giving up the objects of sense gratification, being freed from attachment and hatred, one who lives in a secluded place, who eats little, who controls his body, mind, and power of speech, who is always in trance and who is detached, free from false ego, false strength, false pride, lust, anger, and acceptance of material things, free from false proprietorship, and peaceful. Such a person is certainly elevated to the position of self-realization. And then the next verse, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nasochati Nakangsati Samak Sarve Subhutesu Mad Bhaktin Labhate Param. One who is thus transcendentally situated at once, the previous verse explains how to be transcendentally situated, right? At once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed toward every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. This was the example of the 6 Goswamis. They actually experienced this. And they attained transcendental bliss. Okay, so here we see Prabhupada's point. Unless one is related with Sri Krishna, the reservoir of all pleasures, it is very difficult to have complete pleasures, perception in this material body. You have read Bhagavad Gita, and it is stated that ultimate happiness, well, we just read the 2 places where it's explaining ultimate happiness in the Bhagavad Gita. Ultimate happiness can be realized by transcendental senses only. By pure devotional service, our senses become transcendental senses. They're no longer material senses. And then it says, and that's the only way you can understand Krishna, because Krishna is on that transcendental level. Unless we come to the transcendental level, we will not be able to understand anything about Krishna consciousness. Our movement for Krishna consciousness is to turn the present polluted senses of people into its original pure form, just like when a man cannot see properly due to cataracts in the eyeball. Similarly, we cannot have real sense pleasure without being purified in Krishna consciousness. This purification can be done only by engaging the senses for Krishna. So therefore, the next verse after 54 says, Bhaktya mam abhijananti yavanyaschasmi tattvata tato mam tattvato gyatva vishetetat anantaram. One can understand me, meaning Krishna, as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of me, by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. See, Prabhupada is following that in this purport. In 1967, to this man, Mr. Tabor. Krishna, the purification can be done only by engaging the senses for Krishna. This is said also in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, verses 32 to 35. Same point again is made. This purification can be done only by engaging the senses for Krishna. Krishna is called Hrishikesha, or the master of the senses. His senses are omnipotent. Therefore, when our senses will be engaged to satisfy the senses of Krishna, at that time we will have perfect sense gratification. Well, that's what's being said in this verse. When the Lord was present, persons who were able to satisfy their material hankerings by seeing him in true perspective were thus able to go back with him to his kingdom, go back to Godhead. Now, this seems a little confusing. It says that the persons who were able to satisfy their material desires or hankerings by seeing Krishna in true perspective, seeing him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they were thus able to go back home or back to him, with him, to his spiritual kingdom. But those persons who were unable to see the Lord as he is remained attached to material hankerings and were not able to go back home, back to Godhead. So this is the dilemma of everyone. Even if you're an initiated devotee, even if you're chanting, as long as these material desires are pestering the mind, we will not go back to Godhead. But if we see Krishna correctly as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we are his eternal servant, not academically, but factually. There's a difference between academically understanding something and factually understanding. Factually understanding means you will do everything from a certain point to eliminate all material association and be engaged 24 hours a day in Krishna service. It's a slow process. I mean, look, did someone put a gun to your head and say, if you don't marry my daughter, I'm going to kill you right now? Huh? Did someone put a gun to your head? You voluntarily did it. So you cannot get out of that situation. You can't say, oh, everything is Maya, my wife is Maya, my kids are Maya, I'm going to become a sannyasi. No. That would be the wrong decision to make. Right? But after your kids are grown up, after you and your wife have gone on pilgrimages and your wife is secure, either she'll live with her kids or she'll live in a holy place like Vrindavan, then you can take sannyas. Which means you're not perfect yet, but you're on the fast track to become perfect if you follow it seriously. Or your wife and you have given up sense gratification and are completely dedicated to pleasing the senses of Krishna, then you don't even have to take sannyas. Right? But there can't be any slip-ups, let's put it like that. So, the real, the ability to transform your senses from being mundane to transcendental, your activity from being mundane to transcendental, that is the process, that is the education that we receive in Krishna consciousness. That's why Prabhupada says here, he says, our movement for Krishna consciousness is to turn the present polluted senses into its original pure form, just like when a man cannot see properly due to cataracts in the eyeball. So a cataract doesn't mean you're blind, although you can't see properly. And sometimes you can't see anything. It's a film that develops over your eye due to basically eating a lot of junk food and having bad habits. But they can operate and take that film away, and now you can see normally. You didn't really go blind. You developed this tight this type of shroud over your eye of junk, right? And they can take it away, and you can have perfect vision again. So in the same way, our mind can become shrouded with millions of desires for sense gratification, and in the meantime, even though we may be chanting, even though we may be initiated, but we're not regularly hearing and not taking the association of advanced devotees. We seem to vacillate toward associating with loose devotees, just like there's Los Angeles and Loose Angeles. See? So if you go to the Los Angeles side, even though you might be chanting sometimes and you're initiated and you have your Bhakti Shastri or Bhakti Vaibhava or whatever, but because of those desires, material desires, basically God is dead for such people. Now, Prabhupada talks about that also. He says in the June 30th, 1968, 1 year after this letter, 1967, which is June 9th, 1967, he says, our Krishna consciousness movement is no religious movement, as it is generally understood. Our propaganda is to make people feel for Krishna or God and become engaged in his transcendental loving service. Anyone who has a concept of God will agree to this philosophy. There are many sectarian religions where acceptance of God is there, but there is no love for God. So we are teaching love for God. That means Krishna consciousness is the postgraduate class for all religious sects. Whoa, what a statement. Krishna consciousness is the postgraduate class for all religious sects. In other words, we don't discriminate, oh, this guy's Muslim, or this guy's Christian, or this guy's Jain, or this guy is Sikh, or this guy is this or that, or atheist. We don't discriminate. We can teach anyone to love God and be ecstatically in love with God and offer everything to God. We can teach them. That's the advanced stage. That's postgraduate spirituality. We do not protest the Christians or the Mohammedans or Jews or any other religious sect that there is no idea of God conception in their religion. More or less, in every religion, the God conception is there. But nobody tries to love God. That's the point. Savai pumsa paro dharma yato bhakti rahaksuche ahaitiki pratihata yayatma suprasiddhati. When you spontaneously love God, it's not forced, it's not artificial, but you spontaneously love God, then you've hit the pinnacle of human development. So it says, just like in Christian religion, they go to church every day and try to exact bread from God, but they never try how to please God. They're always asking for something. Give me bread. And so we read the Lord's Prayer. Dear God, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. They're praying that every day. But like we said yesterday, God is giving everyone bread every day. Every animal and all living entities, even the demons, they're getting bread every day. He's providing it. So you don't have to ask him for bread. And then it says, and because this love of God and the process is not thoroughly, and because this love of God and the process is not thoroughly instructed, therefore they have come to the stage of understanding that God is dead. Now, let's look that up. God is dead on the internet. You're going to see that there are many theologians in Christianity who are saying God is dead. And there's two ways that they say that. And it's the same thing in all the religions. He's dead because people don't actually love God. They talk about God, but their whole thing is they're using God to have some material prosperity, because they're saying, give us bread. They're not saying, what can we give you? They're saying, what can you give me? You see. So, therefore, they go to Balaji and they ask, let me do that. Give me this, give me that. They go to Durga, give me this, give me that. They go to anybody who can give them something, any one of the demigods, or even Krishna himself. They're coming to Krishna with material desires. Give me this, give me that. So what does it say? It says that Nietzsche was the person who really blasted to the whole world, God is dead. So now, when they say, and then there are different theologians, modern theologians, who also say God is dead. But there's two ways of understanding what they're saying. One is, God is dead because people, although they profess to be part of a religion, they're following it with many material desires, and if God doesn't give them what they want, they walk away from it. Right? And then the second way they take it is they actually think God is dead. Jesus died on this cross. He's dead. Right? And we're not even sure if he resurrected. It might just be a big hoax made by the Jews. There are a lot of people like that now. They say, how do we know he actually resurrected from the dead? The whole thing might just be a story. So the fact that Jesus died on the cross, and it's definitely said that he died on the cross, means that he has to be a mundane person. This is the way they're calculating. So he died. So, and then the Jews, they say, well, no, it's not that we don't believe in Jesus, but we believe that because what the Nazis did in Auschwitz, God is dead. It started there, when all our Jews were killed by the Nazis. That means God is dead. So you see, there are people that actually believe God is dead, and there are people who are saying, well, God is dead in the mind of all our believers because they're just following religion materially. And that's in Krishna consciousness. So I know people, they are pujaris, they're doing pujas every day, but they're materialists. They don't actually believe in God. They're stealing God's money by doing pujas and not giving the money to the temple. See? So that for that person, God is dead, because they're just following Krishna consciousness for money, not for, there's no love at all. There's no ecstasy, that's for sure. Their ecstasy is stealing the money that belongs to Krishna. And they worship deities also every day. Just like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur tells he has this book called of Proverbs. And there's a proverb of the Brahmin who's worshiping the deities every day, but he uses Shalagram Shila to break nuts. When the curtain is closed, he's breaking nuts using Shalagram Shila, which is a stone, right? So that means God is dead for him, you see. So any Brahmin who does not take a vow of poverty and just does pujas and doesn't turn all the money in, for that person, God is dead. He doesn't actually believe in God. He thinks he or she can get away with stealing Krishna's money. See? So this is a normal thing today. Most people follow religions materially. They don't really, you could say that about the Hindus. They go to church, they go to the temple, they go to Balaji, they go to Durga, they go to this one and that one, and they're asking for material things. They're not actually dedicating their life to the deity. And if the deity doesn't give it to them, just like we told the story about the businessman in India, what's the name of the place? Maharashtra. When there was that big earthquake, he said, I don't believe in our gods anymore. So I don't believe in Ganapati. I'm paying this Brahmin every day to come to my shop. You know how they're sitting there, in their yogic position in their shop. And then the Brahmin comes, and then they open this little cabinet, right, that's in the shop, right? And there's the deity of Ganapati. And then the Brahmin goes, and he gives him some money, he goes away. He does it every day. And so his business does good. It has nothing to do with love of God. You see? So for those people, God is dead. See? So the theologians are using it in two ways. Some people seriously say God is dead, finished. And other people say God is dead because the people are just going to God for material purposes. They don't really have any love for God. So you see, Prabhupada is brilliant. It's unbelievable. He's saying all these things. He says, but those persons who were unable to see the Lord as he is remained attached to material hankerings, they can't see the Lord because they're still holding on to these material desires, and were not able to go back home, back to Godhead. So some people were able to go back home, back to Godhead, because they were able to satisfy their material hankerings or desires by seeing him. In other words, the example is Dhruva Maharaj. He goes looking for Krishna so that he can have a kingdom bigger than his father, who threw him off his lap, and because the mother threw him off the lap of the father and said, you are not born from my womb. The father had 2 wives or several wives. So therefore you can't sit on your father's lap. And then Dhruva got really upset. And he's only 5 years old, but he was Kshatriya. So he goes to his mom and he complains. And she said, look, I can't do anything. Your father doesn't like me as much as he likes the other wife, and he won't listen to what I say. He said, then what can I do? She said, well, you can go to the forest and look for Krishna. He said, in the forest? She said, yes. He said, okay. So he's a Kshatriya, right? He's only 5 years old. He's a Kshatriya. So he does it. He walks into the forest by himself and starts asking the trees and asking the animals, where's Krishna? And the Lord sees this. So he sends Narada Muni to him. And Narada Muni said, look, kid, this jungle is not a place for you. You go back to your mom. He said, no, I'm not going to go back to my mom. And I'm not going to listen to what you say, because you're not telling me what I want to hear. He said, well, what do you want to hear? I said, I want to hear how I can see Krishna. He said, okay. And he gives him this severe austerity on a month-by-month basis. The last month, the 6th month, he stops breathing. He already stopped eating and drinking water, and then he has to stop breathing, and he has to be standing on 1 foot. And he does it. At that point, the Lord appears in front of him, and he says, what do you want? But when he sees the Lord, he said, oh my God, he said, I wanted so much material things, but now that I see you, I realize I was looking for broken pieces of glass, but I've found a diamond. Therefore, I don't want anything. And the Lord said, no. He said, I'm going to give you more than what you want. I will give you, you can have an eternal planet in the material world. Notice it's still in the material world, but it's an eternal Vaikuntha planet, and it's the pole star. That's Dhruva abode. He's there now, and I will be your guardian. So the Lord is there also with Dhruva Maharaj. It's an eternal planet in the material world. So he said, I was looking for a broken piece of glass. I found a diamond. And now I don't want anything. The Lord said, no, you're going to get more than what you wanted. Your father, Uttanapada, is the ruler of the whole world, of the whole universe, but you have an eternal planet in the material universe. Okay. So that is, what is that? That is able to satisfy their material hankerings by seeing him, by seeing Krishna, in true perspective. And thus they were able to go back with him to his kingdom, go back to Godhead. Okay. So this is all very interesting. I'm going to talk about it again tomorrow. There's more that has to be said about this because it's very important. That it is possible to be initiated, to have your Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhakti Vedanta degrees, all that knowledge, and still be meditating on material desires. Say, it is possible. And for such a person, God is dead. And commits sinful activities. Just like the priest who's cracking nuts with the Shalagram Shila behind the curtain, behind the it's a little scary. Haribol, glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we went from Minasyan to Dhruva Maharaj. These are all interesting things. You see, they're all connected. They're all connected by this purport. Prabhupada is amazing. Nobody else can do this.
Yeah. Being able to articulate how Bhakti Yoga is the thing that is also where he says like this is the postgraduate study for all religions.
All religions. We don't discriminate.
Yeah, because it's all of the ultimate goal is to love the Lord. So.
Yes, and teach other people to come to the level of transcendental senses, transcendental life, where you get free of all those misconceptions.
Another thing Maharaj you said about Bhakti Yoga is a pleasurable tapasya with full of ecstasy.
Yeah, the tapasya is actually pleasurable. Yeah.
So profound.
Yeah. Lord Chaitanya's mercy. We have to hear these things every day, and realize, you really want to have sense pleasure? You have to purify the senses. You have to come to the transcendental level. Then you'll have real sense pleasure. What we're having now is not real. It's all, and it just leads to becoming forlorn. What does that forlorn mean? It means hopeless. You feel really hopeless. There's no future for you. And that's why Manasya was willing to kill people and not being afraid to be killed or go to jail for the rest of his life, because he has no hope of getting the sense gratification that he wants. And he's angry. And he wants to kill people because of it. You see how crazy things are? And this war in Ukraine, it's crazy. It's unnecessary completely. They're the same religion. The Ukrainians and the Russians have the same religion. Exactly the same religion. They've been together for 1,500 years, right? Their language are they both speak, the Ukrainians also speak Russian, most of them, right? So they share the language also. And Ukrainian is a Slavic language also. It's not like an Indo-European language. Yet they're killing each other. They hate each other. And just like in World War World War I, I think it was, on Christmas, the Allies on one side, the Germans on the other side, because it was Christmas Eve, the Germans started singing Christmas carols in German. And the British started singing the same Christmas carols, but in English. And They put their guns down and they came and joined together in the middle of the battlefield, right, at night. And they celebrated Christmas together. This is a true story. You can look it up. It actually happened. And then they went back, and the next day, their commanders forced them to shoot at each other and try and kill each other again. Their commanders, when they heard about what happened. It's an amazing story. Amazing story. They're the same religion, right? Same tradition, everything. But they were forced to kill each other. And that's what's happening now in Russia and Ukraine. Do you see that?
Yeah, I'm certain.
Did you ever know something like that happened?
I did hear about,
Huh?
yeah, the Christmas truce of 1914.
It was not an official truce. The soldiers themselves came together. It wasn't because their commanders said, "Now you guys can go together." When they found out, they got angry, and they forced them to start shooting again.
Yeah, this is unofficial ceasefire, they say.
Yeah,
It's World War I, 1914.
yes. You see how crazy politics is? It trumps. The trump is a word, actually. It means that it overrides other things. So it overrides your religion also. They're the same religion. They're singing the same songs, right? But yet, they're forced to kill each other because of politics. Haribo. Oh, glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Tried this.
Oh, great. Yeah, yeah. It looks beautiful.
Last time she also put the little mango, just a drop of
Okay.
mango on that one, but we didn't have it yesterday.
Okay.
So we should add that.
Yeah, instead of an almond, we should put a fruit.
Fruit.
Yeah. Like raspberry or raisin or something like that. Raisin would be better. And you can make like a face with this. Anyway, that's something else. Haribol. Thank you very much. Good.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhagati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Bandha Muhi Savadhana Mate
Bandhamui Savadana Mate
Jahara Prasade Bhai E Bhavatoriya Jai
Janara Prasade Bhai E Bhavatmuriya Jai
Krishna Prapti Ho Jaha Hoite
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Koriya Aikya
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Tete Goriya
Arna Kori Ho Mane Asha
Arana Koriya Mane Asa
Shri Guru Charane Rati ऐसे उतामागति
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttamagati
जय प्रसाद पूरे सर्वा आशा
Ye Prasade Pure Sarvasa
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिला जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाशा जयते
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते
वेदे गाय जहाँ रचरितो
वेदे गाय चंद्र चरितो
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आधम जनारा बंधु
गुरु करुणा सिंधु अदन जन बंधु
लोकेनाथ लोकेरा जीवाना
लोकेनाथ लोकेर जीवाना
हा हा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पद छाया
आहा प्रभु कुरा दया दया मोरे पद जया
एबे जास गुशुक त्रिभुवाना
एबे आस्कि भुवाना
प्रभुपाद पतित पवाना
प्रभुपाद पतित पवना
जयो प्रभुपदा जयो प्रभुपदा जयो प्रभुपदा जयो प्रभुपदा
जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा
नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामीति नामिने
नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामीति नामिने
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पश्यता देशतारिणे
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे श्रीमती भक्ति वेदांत स्वामीति नामिने
जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद
जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद
Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajaka Shasta Tarasatara Shri Shri Srimani's Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anantakoti Vaishnavindi ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Shikahoro Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sam Kundaradha Giri Govardhana ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Shri Mayapura Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Tulasi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai, Ganga Maya ki jai, Jamuna Maya ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guru. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Premanandi. Hari Bol. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhakti Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskati Lisatara. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya. The lotus feet are our spiritual master, the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with grateful reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only sufferings are purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection and fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes, fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates, by him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter in your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna. Namaste.